So give us a full update when we get to that.
Thank you. Those are nice.
Almost real food.
We're on? Okay. So let us continue with the next item under public hearing, which is another proposed ordinance to be introduced. And I guess, John Sawicki, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Again, this is an ordinance that was introduced, first presented to the council probably the end of 2012. It relates to amending the municipal code, the subdivision ordinance, and the zoning ordinance related to the regulation of condominiums and condominium conversions. There were a number of questions raised in the previous hearing. That matter was then referred back to the planning subcommittee, council members O'Connell and Conway, and we had several meetings going over some of those details. They're called out, and the staff report includes some very detailed discussion of a number of issues. I'd prefer not to get into those in terms of the presentation, but any questions people have, we're glad to entertain that at the end of the presentation. The ordinance amendments really are threefold. One is to implement a housing element policy from the last adopted housing element. There's some language regarding discouraging the conversion of apartment buildings to condominiums unless it can be demonstrated that conversion would not adversely affect the rental market. So that was one set of one goal. There are a number of inconsistencies between the city's previous procedures or current procedures and state law and subdivision map act. So another goal was to eliminate those inconsistencies, bring our ordinance into compliance with state law. And third was to eliminate some internal inconsistencies and reorganize the zoning code language in particular to be a little more consistent internally. And so those were really the three goals of the ordinance. Staff is recommending the council introduce ordinance 566, and I would be glad to entertain any questions on any of the details contained within the ordinance.
Questions? Does the subcommittee want to weigh in on anything? Clark? Terry?
No, maybe Terry has.
I'm actually... Sorry, I got with a nut in my mouth. I'm happy with the changes that we've made in the committee. I think that we addressed some of my concerns that made exceptions for moderate housing, and I felt that those exceptions should really be for low and very low instead of for the moderate housing, because moderate is still out of the reach of many of the San Mateo County residents and the Brisbane residents. So I'm actually very happy with the work that both the Planning Commission did prior to it coming to the subcommittee and the slight changes that the subcommittee made. And I would recommend approval.
So in essence, the subcommittee is recommending adoption of this ordinance.
Okay. Or introducing it tonight and adopting it eventually, right? Okay. Questions, Cliff?
Yeah, I have some questions. So on page 10.
Oh, the red line?
Yes. So 16.24.020. So yeah, just trying to get some clarification. You know, when I look at this, I think of, okay, you know, how does this affect the properties that we have rezoned across the street? And when we were, you know, at the Planning Commission level, and then when it was brought to the council, the intent was that if those properties, if those property owners took advantage of changing their use to the mixed use, that 25% of the property would be dedicated to public space. So how does that figure into these calculations John?
Well, sort of two components of the answer, or the question really. One is, although the housing element policy directed the rezoning to occur, as we know, that rezoning action has not formally, that ordinance has not formally been introduced yet or presented either to the Planning Commission or the City Council. So we'll have an opportunity to ensure that whatever zoning regulations we develop as part of that district comply with the requirements of state law. So that's sort of one side of it, is we have an opportunity to make sure whatever we do is in compliance. I think the question that's maybe a little more unclear to me, and I think that's probably the best vehicle to take care of it, is the Quimby Act, and these restrictions relate to recreation. You're talking about recreational uses and open space. I know the intent of the previous policy direction was public space, and I'd probably have to have a conversation and further conversation with the city attorney as to how Quimby Act provisions which relate to recreation and parks would relate to provisions of public space, which could go beyond just active recreation. So I haven't had a chance really to discuss this in detail with the city attorney, but certainly when we introduce that ordinance, that would be something we'd want to have pinned down.
Okay, all right. So so what we're approving here, it would be separate then from the 25% dedication. So, because I guess this is more relating to. Well, okay, so this, yeah. I mean, I'm still just trying.
This relates to, let's say the city, does two actions with this mixed-use site. We amend our general plan policies or create a general plan, a new district, and then we create zoning language to implement that district. You're talking about having language that's probably general plan policy language. Mm-hmm. That then gets carried forward theoretically into the zoning. Quimby issues come up when you're subdividing property. So if the property were developed as a for sale product, then we'd get into the issues of how our general plan aspirations relate to the requirements of state law. If it were not developed as a residential subdivision or condominium, so if it were rental property and the units were rented, the rules that we're talking about here would not apply, because these relate only to subdivision and condominium. So again, I think, and in that basis, we're going to have to follow the requirements of state law one way or the other in terms of the Quimby Act before it comes to recreation and parks.
Okay. All right. And then that using 50 lots or 50 units, why was that number chosen?
That's state law.
That's state law. Okay. There was, and I didn't, oh yeah, okay, it's 17.30.030. I don't know what page it's on. Sorry about that.
Page 15.
Okay, it's in regards to the washer and dryer for the 5 units. So, it talks about you can either install the hookups or you can do the laundry room. And, just thinking of if there were 5 units and there's 1 washer, 1 dryer, it didn't seem that there was enough that to accommodate the 5 separate families that might be living in those units. So perhaps change that number to 2 and 2, and if what would be the ramifications of increasing the number of appliances.
It came up, I believe, in the first city council hearing. One of your colleagues who is no longer on the council had proposed that, every unit be required to have a hookup, a washer dryer hookup. We did some surveying in terms of what other places require on the peninsula in particular, found out that there's no provisions for that requirement. And the 1 per 5 we found was from Burlingame, Pacifica, and I believe it was San Mateo. It was kind of a standard that had been used in those jurisdictions. There's, again, like many things, there's a balancing act. If you're trying to promote or encourage low mod housing, you want to make sure it's properly amenitized, but you don't necessarily want to drive the infrastructure in a way that, again, makes it less affordable. So you have those two factors have to be balanced. Certainly in conversions, if the apartments weren't plumbed for that, that would become quite a difficult proposition for a low mod conversion if you're going to require every unit maintain a standalone washer dryer. So we came up with this as sort of an opportunity, some flexibility, so that on a given project the city could impose what makes sense, because not necessarily one size may not fit all. There might be circumstances where if you have access to community facilities that are, laundromat within walking distance, et cetera, is that space better used in a project, in a private project, for other kind of community or project serving amenities? So we wanted to maintain the flexibility and maximize flexibility. And again, that would be part of that use permit, so that would be subject to planning commission review. They would look at an individual project, assess what was being proposed, and determine if it was reasonable one way or the other. So that was really our intent, to provide flexibility.
Sure. And I'd like for us to have a discussion about it if we thought that, adding an extra washer and dryer would be appropriate, in...
What page is that on, Cliff?
Page
15?
15.
15?
No, actually, page 16.
16, yeah.
Oh,
Number 2.
The title was on 15.
Okay, yeah, so B2, either a washer and dryer hookups to be installed in each unit, or just the one washer and one dryer. And I'm thinking of space, I don't think that would take up too much additional.
So you're saying leave this in here?
I would change it to
2
2.
hookups per 5 units.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Can I ask a question, if anyone knows? What is the washer dryer situation at our senior housing right now? Do they have individual hookups, or is it a shared communal facility? Does anyone know?
I think I want to say that they're individual, but I'm not sure now.
Where is Fred Smith when we need him?
We'll find out.
Yeah. I think, the complication for me is that, there are different sizes of washers and dryers. And, if you have a commercial washer and dryer, you probably don't need more than one at most for 5. If you have small little ones. So I'm not sure it's the number that counts, but the capacity.
But you can't wash everything at once if it's a small household.
Can if you're a guy.
Yeah. You can wash everything at once if it's big enough.
Well,
it varies a lot. I mean,
Yeah, my clothes are at that point where they
if you got small kids, you're going to have a heck of a lot of laundry, so it really varies a lot. I don't know.
But, you have 5 families, and if you multiply that by 2.35, now you're looking at, whatever,
Well, I
13 people.
out at the marina, there's 2 washers, 2 dryers for 500 and something slips, but that...
no liveaboards.
Yeah, no liverboards, but I mean, it's, I don't know, that's probably more like apples and oranges, but, and I guess there's no real standard for it other than what you found in Burlingame, right? And just,
Yeah, there was no jurisdiction that we found on the peninsula that required more than 1 per 5 units. I mean, that doesn't preclude the council from making it a different unit. I would just suggest it be on a 1 per X basis, whether it's 1 per 3 or 1 per 2. So again, the math works out. So whatever you determine you wanna require. Again, there's a lot of, if it's going to be a larger, if it's going to be 1 bedrooms or studio units, that's, I guess, our leeriness about a one-size-fits-all standard, because if it's studios, would you apply that standard the same as you would to 3-bedroom units? And that's, I think, always the worry about one-size-fits-all, but it's up to the council's discretion.
Well, you could certainly make it based on the number of bedrooms if you wanted to redo the math.
Well, even,
Yeah.
I mean, today's world, I mean, there's a lot of studios have 2 people in them. It's just so expensive.
Oh, of course.
So, even if it wasn't the 2.35 that's used in this document, say it's just 2, it's still 10 people. And, you get one, and who's to say that you wouldn't get 4 or 5 people in a 1-bedroom unit? I mean, unless there's some kind of restrictions that you have in the CCNRs, but yeah, one unit could hog the washer and dryer all day, and I just don't think that's very appropriate. And I think that we can do it. And John just I mean, he found some information from Pacifica, right, or was it Burlingame? Or someplace on the peninsula,
I'll
right?
tell you what, why don't we just make a note of it, and then staff can do some more research, and we can knock it around a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Is that?
Yeah.
Well,
But we're probably looking at introducing this one tonight. So.
yeah, I would suggest that we're not going to find, I mean, the information we have is that in San Mateo County, there are only 3 cities that require the standard, and it's 1 per 5, and that's the data. I mean, we can keep going wider, but I think, frankly, it's just whatever the council wants to do.
I mean, I'm fine with doing it. I think it's the humane thing to do. So, but and I don't think it adds that much of a significant cost to the person who's building it. So, I think we should make it 2 per 5.
I'm fine with making it 2 per 5.
Yeah, well, we can, remember, we have to have our public hearing
I
before
know.
we
Okay.
actually decide.
And, then the other thing that I have, and it's really, I guess, not so much questions for you, John, but for the subcommittee, I guess then we can have our discussion about that. And it was, with the fewer than 5 units and how we determine, what is.
What page are you on?
This is page 20. So this is like your big section in this document. And, looking at comparable market rate condominiums, and then, what then, how do you determine the trigger for then saying a project that has 5 or fewer units, that one of them has to be affordable to moderate, and then there's another trigger that perhaps then one of the units has to be affordable to low-income households. And even though we state that they're not part of the inclusionary requirement of our affordable housing ordinance, in some ways, they do become that. And, what if you have a situation where you have a duplex being built? Then that would mean that at least from how I'm reading it, that then one of those units has to be built to be affordable to moderate, or perhaps even low income. I mean, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I'm just trying to get some clarification from where you guys were coming from on that.
Through the chair, I maybe would start the discussion, and the subcommittee can jump in as they see fit. The section you're referring to, I assume, is on page 20, 1703060A2, is that what we're referring to?
That is correct,
Okay.
John.
Basically, again, this is to provide an outlet or an opportunity where the ordinance would otherwise prohibit conversion. So basically, this is above and beyond. It gives a property owner an opportunity to make a case why they should be able to convert when the market conditions don't allow for that. Because right now we have a cap. If it's under 5% vacancy rate, there would be no opportunity for that individual to convert, right? So that would be the rule. So the idea of they would offer an incentive above and beyond what would normally be required to allow them to pursue that particular conversion. I mean, that was the goal. It was not to impose a new requirement on somebody. It was to allow them to do something that they would otherwise be precluded or prohibited from doing based on the market conditions.
So if you can explain those market conditions, because I tried to find it in here, and I know it says revert back to the one section of the document, but then it wasn't clear about it, so.
Well, I think the short answer is it's a 5% vacancy rate is considered the minimum for a healthy rental market. That's per ABAG, per regional standard.
Okay, and that's for the county?
No, it'd be for the city.
The city, so, okay, and then how do we determine that? I mean, is there like how do we come up with that 5%?
Department of Finance tracks records annually. There are other sort of ABAG tracks demographic data. So there are sources to track vacancy rate, typically on a yearly basis. There may be a lag. The data may only come out once a year, and we might have to try to refresh it depending on seasonality. But there's usually good annual data that's available.
How does Brisbane usually kind of play out?
I believe we're typically under 5%.
I would say that's correct. Because I know a lot of people that it's very competitive when something becomes available.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of applicants, so whatever becomes available doesn't stay available very long.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
We have a realtor in the house could probably verify that.
And then, when I was reading this, and I was, I was hoping to get some clarification from you when we had our meeting tonight. There was a property, I think it was on Monterey Street, it was Mariposa, where it's in the R2, and there was a home that then was it was torn down and 2 condos were built. Now, so how does something like that play into this, or is that completely different? Converting a single-family home to a condo, or 2 condos.
Well, I wouldn't. If something was torn down and rebuilt new, that wouldn't be a conversion.
So
that would just be a new conforming condominium based on the R2 zone standards. Conversion would be if you literally took an existing structure and turned it into a condo. And I've not seen that done with the single family to a duplex or multiple units. The cost of putting in an extra kitchen and meeting all the building code requirements of 2 units.
Okay.
And you don't normally see that being something that pencils for a duplex or something you could actually sell as a condo.
Sure. So, then where do you see something like this being played out in Brisbane, John?
In terms of the conversion sort of situation, I don't know that the market here in the foreseeable future is actually going to that there are properties where the market in the near future would really support a conversion. I think, again, we have to have certain regulations in place in compliance with state law that may address issues that were hot real estate market issues 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I think a lot of the concerns over condominium conversions is a product of different real estate markets, frankly, and we're having to refresh rules to deal with problems that were in play 20 years ago, frankly. I don't foresee any condominium conversions of residential in the near future on any of our multiple family projects in town.
All right. What about converting office space to potentially condo conversion? And of course, that would, probably have to go before the council for some kind of.
Yeah, that would be an interesting, again, you're changing really building occupancy types, and the question of how easily can you do that and how financially feasible is that. Certainly in higher markets where there's more pressure on real estate, those kind of deals can be done. Again, we haven't seen that on this part of the peninsula, certainly at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, all right. It's good to get that clarification out there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I have two very minor things. On the first page, tentative final subdivision map A. At the end of A, there's must be a typo.
Oh, first page of the red line.
First page of the red line, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Where conversion of any existing structure to condominiums, community apartments, it's both or and and I assume it's one or the other. Or. Yeah. And then we should say stock cooperatives as described in section blah, 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 right? Very minor thing. The second item I have is a bigger question, and this is really for the city attorney. Get his attention right on. There's a lot of stuff in here about, inclusionary zoning and affordable housing percentages and so forth, units, etc. And yet, there's some distressing legal decisions have been made in the realm of inclusionary zoning in California, which I believe is actually potentially heading to the Supreme Court, California Supreme Court. And so I guess my question is, where would all this stand in reference to the legal issues surrounding whether or not inclusionary zoning is something we can actually do?
Based on the current state of the law, this type of inclusionary zoning, I believe, is permitted. As you noted, the city of San Jose recently had an affordable housing ordinance that was challenged, and the Court of Appeals upheld it. It was appealed to the Supreme Court, and they accepted review just a couple of days ago. That's going to take probably another year and a half to make its way through the system. They'll have to set oral argument. There'll be argument and decision. But there have been a number of cases that have actually upheld the ability of a city to impose affordable zoning, affordable housing as a condition. So I believe that we are in compliance with applicable law at this point.
At this point?
Yes.
That could change.
It could change, but it would be really speculative in terms of what the Supreme Court might do.
So we're okay now?
Yes.
Okay, that's the question. All right. Okay, shall we open the public hearing?
Yep.
Okay. Open the public hearing on this ordinance. Anyone wishing to speak, now's your chance.
Motion to close public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so how close are we to introducing it, or do we want to make some changes that require going back to the drawing board?
Well, I think we could introduce it, but I think that Cliff, we weren't clear on his required change, or...
Yeah, I'd like to have two
It's on page
washer,
16.
Right.
dryer, appliances for 5 units.
Through the chair, could I just request that you put it on a multiple of 1 per whatever, because if I have an 8-unit, I don't really want to have to do a washer and a half and a dryer and a half. Just 1 per 4, 1 per 3, whatever you decide, but if you could just put it on a unit count sort of thing.
I have a question about, what does the building code require now? I mean, can you build a unit that doesn't have a washer and dryer connector or hookup?
It's my understanding you can, yes.
Can,
On a multiple family.
on a multiple family. So building code allows that. So,
Single family must have a washer dryer hookup.
I don't know. I won't speak to that. I don't know. I've never seen a single family that didn't propose one, a detached single family that didn't have it proposed. I believe it's a requirement, but I wouldn't want to swear
So
to
John, would
that.
you recommend like maybe one washer, 1 dryer per 3 units?
Whatever you decide is all fine. I don't. If you're thinking of 2 per 5, it's 1 per 3, 1 per 2, whatever you want to do is.
That's a good baseball number.
which?
1 for 3.
Okay, perfect.
And they get you in the Hall of Fame, so.
Yeah, right, if you're consistent.
1 for 3.
Over time.
333.
Right.
Would that satisfy your
Yeah, that'd be fine.
one
I think
per 3?
1 for 3 would be acceptable.
Yeah.
So you're okay with hookups for each, or a common laundry room that, hookups for each unit, which is one option in here,
Yes.
and the other is a common laundry room with a washer and dryer on this ratio?
Well, by putting the hookups in each unit, you're increasing the value, right? So you're attracting a more financially affluent client. Whereas if we had the laundry room, then it's less.
Yeah, and the counter of it is the affordable housing portion of it. Yeah. So it's
Well,
both ways. So.
the affordable housing, I personally own a condominium up in Sacramento, and it is considered an upper scale condominium. And when they sold the unit to us, part of their CC&Rs is that you can take the stove out, you can take the refrigerator out, but you can't sell a unit without the washer and dryer present. Even though there's a hookup for a refrigerator and a stove, they're assuming that people who purchase a condominium may not buy the washer and dryer if it's been removed from the unit. And they felt that it was a quality of life issue to have washer and dryers in the units. They assumed people would put a stove and a refrigerator, even if it came without one. So it's an interesting concept that even if there's a hookup, people of lower income may not have the opportunity to have the actual appliance itself. So I understand that it's an issue, and it is a quality of life issue to have enough, and stubbing out a washer dryer that hook up, or the possibility of that, I don't think really would add much to the cost. Perhaps having something that said it has to have a washer and dryer in it would add a cost factor to it. But I don't think the stubbing out of it is that big a thing. So it's just one of those, I think that most people expect it nowadays, and it'd be interesting to know what we have in our senior housing and how they cope with it, because that would be a low demand use. Probably senior housing has, doesn't have the infants, doesn't have the same kind of laundry facilities needed, but it'd be nice to see how that, what the information is at that facility.
Yeah.
So,
So are you suggesting that there should be both?
well, no, I
Instead of
think,
having either
I think
or,
it
but
could be.
You could, that, doing the,
No, I think that it could be either or, but I see where the benefit would be to the person moving in to have it already stubbed and have that choice. I mean, it'd be really difficult to add a washer dryer if it wasn't already stubbed in. I mean, you're going to get
yeah.
no washer dryer.
Well, if you're in that unit, chances are, you don't have the financial.
And if we knew it was all smaller units, designed for single or double occupancy, studios or senior housing or that kind of thing, I could see not having the same amount of need for a washer dryer. But if we're expecting to have families, I think a washer and dryer is very important, especially when they don't have the opportunity in a condominium project to hang their laundry or use alternative means to drying their laundry other than, hanging them out the window like we see in Europe. But we're not going to see it here, I don't think, in our condominium projects.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the suggested language then is either washer and dryer hookups shall be provided for each unit, or one washer and one dryer shall be installed in a laundry room for every 3 units. That's what
Is that what you're saying, Terry?
that's what you were saying, Cliff.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and I just want to make sure.
no, I'll go along with that. I was just giving the rationale, on the unit that I have, that they felt that if it's going to be stubbed out, that they wanted it to be there,
Yes.
because it changes the amenities and the value of the project.
Any other proposed changes?
Except for that typo.
Yeah, then I think,
And
I think we're
You're ready to introduce?
and I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 566 as amended.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right.
Progress. Now we move on to new business. And this is something that we've been trying to get to for God knows how long. And
Yeah.
it's getting late, but not that late. So we're going to deal with the economic development plan from our subcommittee and from the head of the chamber. So who starts it off?
I'll stay.
Okay.
Sorry. We're warming up the projector, so I'll just make some preliminary comments, and then we have a small number of slides to go through. As you've indicated, this is an issue that has been on the council's agenda for some time now. The council's appointed an economic development subcommittee going back to 2010, and we've been meeting on a fairly regular basis since that particular point in time. We came to the council in December of 2011 and discussed the economic development plan, discussed such things as a charrette for the Crocker Industrial Park in Brisbane Village. We discovered issues dealing with staffing and also the general overall business climate. Tonight, we're going to present to you the document that we call the Revealing the Hidden Gem Local Economic Development in Brisbane. I think, I'll speak for myself, and subcommittee can input to this, but I think what we have found is that this is really not so much about developing a specific plan or a document as it is a process, and having an ongoing iterative sort of dialogue with regards to economic development with our various interested parties in this, particularly the Chamber of Commerce and such other people as the brokers in the industrial park, brokers that deal with space out at Sierra Point, and the various business elements in town. We've met with a variety of different people over the last several years. So anyway, in terms of the slide, this is economic development update that we're doing tonight. There we go. As we indicated, I think back some time ago, we've fashioned this plan after our economic development goals that are in the general plan, and those include the stabilization and diversification of our tax base, serve the community by encouraging convenient and beneficial commercial development, provide sufficient revenues for necessary city services, facilitate resident employment, and finally foster sustainable growth dependent on natural resource preservation and replenishment. These are all taken directly out of the Brisbane 1994 general plan. In review of the plan that's in the document and the work that we've been doing over the last few years, we've relied upon a number of different planning efforts and documents that have really go all the way back to the mid-90s. The general plan, which we just talked about, which was adopted in 1994, the economic vitality SWOT analysis, and SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. This was done as far back as 2005 by a person that we brought in from the city of Palo Alto and the exchange program that cities do on the peninsula of personnel. We did a Brisbane business survey presentation at that same time. We did a green marketing plan that was presented to you by the Presidio Graduate School students in May of 2011. We did have the presentation to the City Council in December 2011, and that was done in large part by another management talent exchange person that we got from the city of South San Francisco. We've had other documents. This is creating economic development at the local level. Was an article in the Western City magazine in May of 2012, and the overheated peninsula office market cools from the San Francisco Business Times in July of 2012. So when we talk about economic development in Brisbane, there's really three distinct districts that we are talking about, and all require kind of a different set of issues and different set of strategies. The first one is the Crocker Industrial Park. Second is the Visitation Downtown area. The third is Sierra Point. This excludes the Brisbane Baylands because that's kind of a different animal and is on its own kind of separate planning path. But certainly, looking into the future, that would certainly be a fourth district. This next slide is one that the council has seen in the past or seen variations of. And the whole purpose of the slide is just to indicate kind of over a fairly small period of time, 6 years, just what the transition of major sales tax producers in Brisbane are. In other words, this is not a static situation that we have. That there are a number of businesses that are moving in and out. The businesses that are highlighted are new. The ones that are not highlighted, you would see on both lists, such as Buy Right, Restaurant Supply, Brisbane Recycling, Kutera, which is over in Technology Park. So there's quite a mixture there in terms of new and old.
Is that I see a highlighted Norman Wright. Is that a mistake, or is that they moved out and moved back in?
I believe they did move back in, yeah.
They moved out, right? And
right,
then
they moved out to South San Francisco, and then I believe they moved back in.
Right. Okay.
And that happens here too.
Yeah.
Especially in our.
So I mean, that just seeing the two columns, and
yeah.
And I did.
It's both ways.
No, they
Yeah.
moved. Yeah. So they came from South San Francisco to Brisbane, then they went back to South San Francisco, then they came back to Brisbane.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So the council subcommittee, which consists of council members Conway and Lentz, was established in 2010. We've had a variety of meetings over the past few years with the commercial real estate brokers, with the property owners and managers, including the Village Shopping Center, various business owners. We have the committee itself consists of members of the Chamber Board, which consists of business managers and owners within Brisbane. And then we completed the study and analysis of the hotel feasibility out at Sierra Point. That was presented to you at the August meeting. And I think that was a process that was particularly helpful in terms of how we should look at issues going forward, because it was one where we searched out a subject matter expert in the field, and frankly we had a conversation with them before we brought it forward to the council to conduct this study, and the study results I think were probably quite different than what we might have thought was going to be the case when we first started having the discussion about a hotel. And I think it really illuminated the whole issue to us in terms of what the difficulties of doing a hotel on that site are, and what really issues we're dealing with. So I think that kind of information can help the city kind of focus our energies and efforts going into the future. Would have been nicer if all it was a rosy picture and we could move forward with a hotel, but it's better to know what you're up against. In terms of the subcommittee, the steps for 2013, we have the ULI, which is the Urban Land Institute, charrette, which was budgeted, and we're moving forward with that. The current timing of that is probably sometime in early 2014. The fiber optic in Crocker Park, this is an issue that we've been talking about quite a bit in the subcommittee. You may or may not have heard a news story that was got some prominence in the last couple of weeks about the city of San Leandro and a program they called San Leandro Lit, which is basically conceptually a lot of what we're talking about, where the city got involved with some private properties and some private interests to create a fiber optic in their industrial area, and it has been kind of the spur for a series of economic development efforts and bringing some businesses into that area that wouldn't have otherwise been there. There's a lot of complications with this, a lot of financial risk potentially, and so there's I'm not sure to what extent ultimately the city will be involved, but that's definitely something that we've been working on and kind of going back and forth on over the last year to two. We've had discussions at the council level about reviewing various city properties for public facilities. We're talking about that at the facility subcommittee. As you know, some of those ideas also germinated at the economic development subcommittee, so that will continue to be part of our conversation. We've had various conversations with regards to how we provide resources. I call it staffing options here, but I think it's really kind of the resources we bring to this effort. We're not at a point in time, I think, where the subcommittee wants to make a recommendation, but we are continuing to review that issue and would like to bring that back for council consideration at some point in the future. And then the larger issue is just kind of continuing the discussion of the branding, marketing, and outreach efforts that we need to do with regards to Brisbane and the different districts we have here. One of our most recent meetings, we had a very productive discussion with our chamber president and CEO, Mitch Bull, about the role of the chamber and also just kind of the issues and stuff that we've been dealing with. And so with that segue, I'd like to turn it over to Mitch, and he will prepare to make a presentation of his own. And then we can answer questions about the document and any other thing relative to this subject afterwards.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, city staff, and those watching still at home. I'm Mitch Bull. I'm the president and CEO of the Brisbane Chamber, and I'm here to give you a short snapshot of where the business sector is over the last 2 to 3 years, as well as some information on the Economic Development Subcommittee and where we think we have made gains and where we still have challenges. If we look at the business sector, Clay talked about the 3 distinct areas being visitation, being Sierra Point and Crocker Park. They're all very, very different. One size doesn't fit all, and a solution in Crocker Park is not going to work at Sierra Point and vice versa. But I'm going to start with Crocker Park. Over the past 9 to 12 months, the park's been very active as the economy has started its recovery. If you interview 10 people out in the private sector, they'll tell you all the economy is doing well, the economy is trundling along a little bit, or it's glacial depending on what kind of business they're in. 2 years ago, the vacancy rate in the park was between 14 and 15%, and we saw a lot of signs. But increased activity in the park and an active leasing market has resulted in the actual vacancy rate today being between 8 and 9% based on volume. Now, you will still see signs in the park, and if you notice, a lot of the signs are with DCT, which is the Denver Commercial Trust. They are a real estate investment firm who bought a substantial number of buildings in the park at the height of the market in 2007. And as you that, and they paid high for the high price. And it's a little more of a challenge leasing them than other owners who bought longer ago and can give lower rents. So you're seeing a lot less vacancy in some of the other properties, but DCT is managing to pare their inventory down. And as I said, the park is now between 8 and 9% vacant. We've gained firms such as Pacific Gourmet at 380 Valley, AT&T at 355 Valley. Of course, F.W. Spencer took the 325 Valley Drive, the Gilmore Envelope property. Bay Medical has moved into 460 Valley, and Del Monte Meats moved into the Silk Botanica building. These are all new, and they start to fill the park up. In addition, during the past 4 weeks, several large, long empty parcels are in negotiation for leasing. 100 Cypress is very, very close to having a tenant sign for a commercial laundry business on a lease-to-own basis. That property's been vacant for a long time. And there's another one on South Hill Boulevard that's in negotiation. We hope to have an announcement very, very soon on that, and that would be a fairly large building also. So that would bring this percentage of vacancy down lower. Equally important, firms such as Williams-Sonoma, Pitney Bowes, DHL Logistics, Unipart, and the Chronicle have relocated within the park or renewed their leases. And that brings continued stability to the park. In addition, several established firms have been working with the planning group here, the chamber, to do renovations and increase the size of their operations within the park because their business is growing and they want to stay in Brisbane and continue to do business here, looking for rebuilds and enlargements of their working area. And that's a good thing. That's one of the things where I think we have really, through the Economic Development Subcommittee efforts, I think we've opened up a much better dialogue between city staff, brokers, landowners, property lessees, and as far as getting the way that business is done, I think it's much better and much more fluid than it has been in years past. I think there's a lot more communication of what the city's needs and wants are, as well as the needs and wants and desires of the businesses. And that has only helped to make things smoother and help the idea outside the city of what Brisbane stands for as far as business. Overall, in the North County, the vacancy rate is at 12%. That includes Brisbane and Daly City. So we're faring better than our neighbors to the northwest, down from 15% in 2012. Our rents are stable, but price pressure from lower price markets in the East Bay, such as Hayward, still have a pressure on the park. I mean, we still fight with people trying to, poach our businesses and move them to Hayward and Livermore, et cetera, and that's something we want to not have happen. It's a lot easier to keep the businesses we have in town than try to lose them and replace them once a building goes empty for any amount of time. It's interesting to note that our vacancy rate is dropping even though the industrial space in San Mateo County is the third most expensive in the United States. So there's a reason people still want to be here. These promising results are evident if you look at the sales tax trends since the recession for Brisbane. If we look at the sales tax that the city's collected, taking out VWR, because that's just a piece that no one has control over, But if you look at everybody else at the top 25 on the list, etc., in 2008, the city received approximately $1.72 million in sales tax, and it fell to a low of 1.5 in 2009 and 1.52 in 2010. In 2011, it rose to 1.73, and in 2012, 1.92 million. So we're seeing these smaller, mid-sized firms, their sales tax revenue is going up, as well as the hotels. The hotels are a big chunk of what we bring with TOT. And they are not only filling their rooms more, but they're also charging higher prices. So, you know, that's a good thing for all of us. It brings more revenue into the city. While I'm at Sierra Point with the hotels, the Class A, B office space is not so rosy. The current trends are sluggish, and we're still feeling the effects in Sierra Point of Walmart.com's relocation of most of their staff to San Bruno, as well as Singtown News and the radio stations moving to South City, basically on Sierra Point, but on the South City side rather than the Brisbane side. The buildings at 5000 and 7000 Marina are still vacant, although broker representation has been taken over by Cassidy Turley for the owner, who is Walter Shorenstein Group, and my understanding as of this week is that Shorenstein is looking to possibly sell the properties, which would be good. I'd like to see a new owner out there that may more aggressively market them and try to get some tenants in there. The Diamond properties in Sierra Point, they've had an increase in smaller types of tenants, such as eBay advertising, but overall, the tech and software companies that are driving the regional business are still looking for transit-oriented sites where they can walk to restaurants, get on a train, get on a BART, and be at their office. And for that, they're still looking at Redwood City, they're still looking at San Mateo, they're still looking at downtown San Francisco. Suburban office parks such as Sierra Point and even Oyster Point have a little harder time competing in that market. There's still a glut of space in commercial AB office. The Jack Myers property over at Sister Cities Boulevard took 3 years to get their first tenant. They're still only 45% leased. And there was a second building plan. Of course, that's not happening right now. You know, developers are not building spec buildings, waiting them, you know, you build it and they will come. That's not necessarily the case anymore in commercial office space. So, you know, we have to ride out, continue to ride out the sluggishness in the North Bay market, and you know, Sierra Point will fill back up to some extent. It's just I can't sit here and tell you when. And right now, it probably doesn't look rosy for the next year or so. Sony Corporation has PlayStation. They just took over the entire Siebel, Oracle, the old space there at Bridgepoint. If you know where Bridgepoint is in San Mateo off of 92. They're taking that space has been empty ever since Oracle bought Siebel. Sony PlayStation's moving in there, but they're also giving up 300,000 square feet in Foster City right off 92 out near the bay when you drive across the San Mateo Bridge. That's going to open up a big chunk of space in San Mateo County, and of course, we compete with that. So everything we try to bring into Sierra Point is also we're competing with the big spaces in South City as well as even San Mateo. The good news is both hotel properties have invested a substantial amount of money in upgrading their rooms. And the Homewood Suites was just bought by a new real estate investment group. They've put more money into it. They've kept the management team in place who markets it because they like the trends that they're seeing with increased occupancy rates and increased dollars. So, I mean, this is all good as is investment in Brisbane. You know, people aren't walking away during the recession and leaving their properties open. Retail space within the city hasn't changed much. The occupancy of the shopping center is flat, not very encouraging today, but we are still working with the owners to try to have them do a different and more unique marketing approach to fill those buildings. They've been vacant way too long. Some of the good things on visitation, Mamma Mia Pizza has a new owner, and they're trying to petition to have their hours expanded, so they're trying to raise more business. The small merchants I talk to, business is good. If they have a good product and they are doing marketing, people are going into their businesses. So that's encouraging. I recently attended a week-long workshop at Cal Chamber in Sacramento with the University of Oklahoma on economic development. And I believe as a collective group, the subcommittee, the city staff, the chamber, et cetera, I think we're doing many of the things that other groups and other cities are doing to stabilize the tax base for the future. Valuing and assisting our current businesses is vital. You know, it's much easier to keep a business and grow a business intact that's already here than fill an empty building once they're gone and try to recruit from somewhere else. Community outreach, Clay brought up, and that involves all stakeholders, from all of our community groups, our nonprofits, our landowners, our building owners, our leasees. I mean, everybody has to have a say on where we go in the future as far as the charrette, as far as what we want to do in Crocker Park, what we need to do at Sierra Point. It's not just residents, it's not just citizens, it's not just people that work here. Everybody is in this together. And we need the input and we need the collaboration with all the groups to make Brisbane vitally important for an economy, a place where businesses want to be at, a place where communities want businesses to be here. And it's vital to keep the school systems intact and bring more revenue to the schools, more revenue to the city, and to make this a place that people want to live and work. I mean, we know it's a great place to live, but it's also a great place to work. It's a great place to play. And, you know, we believe that there's a lot of opportunity here for recreational type of businesses, whether it be kayaking, whether it be windsurfing, whether it be photo safaris on San Bruno Mountain. I mean, I've sat down with Mountain Watch and talked about, you know, what can we do to generate interest, income, small businesses on the natural resources side of what happens in Brisbane. I mean, the Bay Area is a beautiful place, but there are very, very few places in the entire Bay Area where you can launch a kayak, where you can go windsurfing. Yeah, Sausalito gets it, but San Francisco has very little access to the bay. Well, we have a beautiful bay, we have a beautiful marina, but we don't have access to the bay if you're a kayaker or much of a windsurfer. We have storage, but it's really hard to launch. Those are kinds of things that we can be looking at in addition to the types of businesses that we more commonly associate with Brisbane, whether it be distribution centers or et cetera. I think we're still very well positioned with the proximity to the airport, the bay, and our agreements with the Port of San Francisco, and that, you know, Brisbane is a duty-free trade zone for people that are importing and exporting goods and services to Europe and China. That's important for people to know. The collaboration and understanding between the city, the staff, the subcommittee members, and our businesses has been instrumental. I mean, when we first started this process, we brought brokers in and said, you know, hey, what do you think of Brisbane? And they go, well, you're hard to do business with. And we said, well, what do you mean? And, you know, some of it was real. Some of it was remnants of the deal at 325 Valley a few years ago. But perception in a greater regional community is what we have to fight. You know, perception is we're small, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have resources, we're not going to throw tax breaks at companies. But what is our benefit? We're small, we're a great place. If you want to call the city manager, you can go see him personally. You don't have to go through, you know, layers of bureaucracy. If you want the chamber to come help you with helping to see what you need for a permit, we can do that. You call one person, that's me. Those are things that we can do that most of your larger cities can't do. They make you jump through lots of hoops. You know, one of the things we all have to understand is some businesses want to be here. Those are the ones we want. You know, the list of businesses I read you aren't cast-offs from somebody else, South City or San Francisco. They're not cast-offs that we're getting somebody's dregs. You know, we're getting businesses that want to be here. And that's what we have to continue to nurture. During the past 12 months, we've had more quote-unquote interviews and solicitations from businesses and brokers to give tours, to look at space, to talk to planning than we had in 3 or 4 years before that, just in 12 months. And, you know, these are all, you know, in a sales thing, if you build your funnel and you get maybe 1 out of every 10. Well, we're getting a few of them. We're signing some leases. And, you know, these are things that I think we probably couldn't have done without this Economic Development Subcommittee. There is no easy, fast solution. It is a long-term project, but it's something that is really just a It's a mission that everybody that works in the city staff, the, council members, planning commission members, as well as our partners in the brokerage community, we're all involved in this. And this is what it's going to take to keep Brisbane vital and diverse from a business standpoint. And that's the key. We don't want to be put in a position where you have one firm like VWR that takes their ball and goes home and leaves us hanging. And I think we're working our way through that. We still have challenges. And our challenges, we have South San Francisco, to our neighbor to the south. They have a huge amount of properties, full and vacant. They have a huge economic development staff. They have 7 people that are doing this, all the time. And, they're known as, cradle of biotech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have lots more infrastructure. They have lots more availability of restaurants. But they also have lots more bureaucracy. And probably more pollution. It's less scenic. And that's what we have to trade off of. And to that end, we have to work with our citizens, with our landholders, to come up with kind of a brand. What are we selling when we're selling Brisbane to a potential business customer, or even a potential developer? Or somebody that wants to buy a house. Why Brisbane? We think there's a lot of good reasons why Brisbane. But I don't have a sheet of paper where I can hand you right now and say, well, this is approved by everybody. This is what Brisbane stands for. This is our general plan. We're not there yet, but we are in that process. And it's going to take time. But we're making inroads, and we're seeing that through the park filling up. Like I said, I wish I had better news on some of the Class A, B, but that's a matter of supply and demand, and right now we're at this low end of that. So, but I think we're getting there. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I look forward to it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
That's a great presentation.
Very good, Mitch.
I do have some questions for you.
Can I do a motion to extend the meeting to 11?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 You touched upon all of all the challenges, all the the great things that are happening, economically for the city. I also appreciate you recognizing the subcommittee, which you're a part of, because I think we've all worked really well together to try and improve the economic conditions, economic climate of Brisbane, not just for businesses coming here and property owners, but just so that the people who live here feel like, okay, things are going well in our town, and because you're right, we're all tied together. You talked about these other cities, like South City. They have 7 people on their economic development team. So some of the smaller cities that what are they doing to retain their businesses, to reach out to other business? Well,
it's mostly about communication. I think us having the Economic Development Subcommittee it was a great step. Now, I do not live in Brisbane. I live in Pacifica, but I have worked in Brisbane pretty much since 1989. So I've been here a long time, and as a business person, and now with the chamber for a little over 5 years. If you look at your Half Moon Bays and your Pacificas, etc., for instance, Half Moon Bay has a great thing in that they have a downtown that you can drive through that has vibrant shops. Our problem is that we're not on 101 anymore. Old County Road is kind of a bypass. When we built 101, it kind of took the drive-by out of town. And if you go up Visitation, you don't dead end, but you go up to the hill, and no one knows what to do once they get to Madhouse. How do they get back out of town? So it's not really a drive-through type of thing. So we have different challenges, and we have to look at it in different ways. It still comes down to getting the word out, working with brokers. I mean, our lifeblood of bringing businesses to Brisbane is really based on commercial brokers, whether it be retail brokers or whether it be brokers that specialize in industrial space or office space, et cetera. Because that's where people are going to, talk to, if you're a Hitachi, you say, okay, I want to be in the San Francisco region. So you'll hire a broker. It says, okay, you know San Francisco and the North County of San Mateo County. Where should I be? Why should I be there? What properties would fit my needs? They're not going to call Clay. They're generally not going to call us unless they have interest. We don't get the initial calls, but we get a secondary. And then what we have to do is really show how easy we are as a city to work with, because they're going to go where it's easier to work with, where they can get kind of a pretty good idea of pricing. One thing that businesses hate is uncertainty. It's not a matter of jumping through hoops. I mean, I don't think they mind jumping through hoops. They don't mind, meeting the prerequisites that council and people have put in place, but they want to know what's going to happen as far as timing, cost, and they don't want uncertainty. They want to have a pretty good plan that they can take back to either Japan or Europe or New York or wherever their head office is. And I think that's what we're doing is what cities, have abandoned. I mean, in decades past, chambers did a lot of this work, and they were bigger. They had bigger staffs, et cetera. And then probably 15 years ago, cities took it upon themselves to have whole economic development departments, et cetera, and that's worked well. But as redevelopment funds have been taken away and city budgets have been impacted by when Prop 13 came on in the 70s, some cities have absorbed that. I mean, San Francisco's got a beautiful economic development team. 100 people. But they're a big city. They're a city and county themselves.
Yes.
For us, we're a city of 4,000 people. We've never had to do this. We've been very fortunate in that when this park was annexed, it was generating lots of revenue, and it was full, and it was humming. And there's been, vacancies have been very, very small over the history of the park. Sierra Point 10 years ago was pretty full, and business was humming. And that the last couple of recessions in 2001 and then this one, have decimated the landscape. But we're not alone, and I think we probably fared better than most cities. I know the new city manager in Pacific would probably trade chairs with Clay any day. They're a city of 40,000, and they have 1/10 the sales tax income that you do, in a city of 40,000.
Sure.
So they have bigger issues. Every city has the same issue.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're 4,000 or you're 40,000 or you're San Mateo. The bills are higher, you have more residents, you have more amenities, but the key is you still have to bring in revenue. And, one of the things that was done in the past, like why we lost VWR, was it got poached by Visalia using enterprise zones, et cetera. But generally, when you bring a business from somewhere else, somebody's losing. Well, the new dynamic there is grow your businesses from inside, help them grow, help them get larger. And also, there's a whole class of business now that we don't know, and they're called solopreneurs. They're people that work from home. They may not have a business license. They may not have any legitimate employees. They may have some contract people, and I'm sure there's lots of them here. We don't know how to reach them. I mean, as a culture, we don't know how to reach them.
Yes.
And if they choose to take out a business license and market themselves, that's a good thing for us, because then we know they're there. But a lot of them work in relative obscurity, and and they're the ones that are going to be small businesses that grow to 1, 2, 3, 5, and someday they become Dolby Labs. I mean, he started as one guy.
Yeah, I'm sure it happened.
And
Packard.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, those are the kinds of things that we can continue to do. But, again, we're still in competition, and we have some unique things with our positioning here, but we also have some challenges because, we have a giant to the north in San Francisco that they'll just suck up everything that they can and they'd be happy to do so. But we have free parking. We don't have a payroll tax. There's a lot of things we have that San Francisco costs a business. And we're trying to reach out and make those things apparent. And, unfortunately, I think San Mateo County in general hasn't done a great job of that because we all operate as the 13 different cities. we're not one county that goes and like Santa Clara, they're Silicon Valley.
They only have.
San Mateo County is the third or fourth richest county in the country, but we still work as independent cities.
Yeah.
And Samcita does some things, but as far as a dedicated county-driven economic development group that brings, like the guys in Texas that want to bring California companies to Texas, we don't do that well here. But again, we haven't had to. We've been very fortunate. This is where people want to live, Bay Area. This is where people want to be, and companies have flourished here. Well, in a downtime, then you're competing with everybody else, be it Las Vegas or Texas or whoever. But if you lived in Las Vegas or Texas, I think you'd rather live in Brisbane. So, I mean, I think we're doing the right things, and I wish there was an easy, three-step process to, fill the parks and fill the offices. But it's going to be a long slog. It's going to be a process, and we're seeing benefits in certain areas. We do need to develop retail. We need to develop retail. That's where sales tax comes from. And yes, another hotel would be great, although my friends in Homewood and Radisson probably don't want another hotel at this point. But we need to have, retail dollars goes right to the schools, right to everything else. We have a lot of wholesalers, and they're not doing a lot of retail business. How we continue to develop that, the park has really evolved from just distribution and warehousing into, food products, home products, integrated resources, Purcell Murray, Pacific Gourmet. What do? They do mushrooms and truffles and stuff to high-end restaurants. I think it's pretty nice that that park is being seen as the Buy Rights, the Pitco's, the Del Monte Meats, Pacific Gourmet.
Culinary hub.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good thing to have. One of our bigger companies is Golden State Lumber. Love to see them build a new showroom. We need to make that kind of stuff happen and not lose them to a Livermore or a San Rafael. And that's what we do. So, as far as, my experience talking to other chamber members and other chamber people in the peninsula, I think we're right where we need to be, and we're continuing that. I think we've done some events with South City at the South City Conference Center. I think we have, recognition for the North Bay that we didn't have 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And I think more people know where Brisbane is than they did before.
Mm-hmm.
The blue signs at the end of the freeway exits don't hurt either. So, I think these are all things that, I think we're trying to do, and it's just, it's everybody here. And it's not saying we will take any old business off the street. We won't. It's got to be the right ones. It's got to be ones that want to be here. But it also has to be somebody that makes sense. And the more we know community-wise what that is, and, work as a collaborative effort, the better the branding, if you want to call it that,
Sure.
is where we go forward. Everybody knows what Palo Alto is, but what is Brisbane? So we have a lot of good things here. We just haven't communicated them real well because we haven't had to.
Yes.
Now we do.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is a good step moving forward, and especially like with Sierra Point, like with the hotel study, as it kind of pointed out, that in order for a hotel to really go up out there, is the current vacancies that we have, we should try and bring in corporate headquarters that would make that hotel feasible. Currently we got 2 projects that are approved, but we have no takers. And those are under development agreements. And those are the kind of things that, we'd want to look at, to get corporate headquarters, how can we make an incentive for them, to want to locate out there to really get the hotel and everything else, and how to keep them and room and board. It's a distribution center up here, but, we want to maybe look at how we can have them do a sales showroom, that we get sales tax out of there. So, that's things like integrated resources. I think they do that now. And, all those businesses, Purcell, Murray, they kind of tie in together, So it's definitely an evolutionary thing, but we have to put attention to it. It's not just going to happen on its own. because then it becomes hodgepodge, and I think the stuff that we laid down in that 1994 general plan really is all relevant today. You look at it, and it's about diversifying that tax base. And, and it'd be really nice at some point where, we're able to offer tax incentives to companies that, that we want to keep here. That it would be nice that we would have that luxury to be able to do something like that, or to attract other businesses. Where, I know we almost had Twitter wanted to come to Brisbane to use this as a manipulation to get San Francisco to change their payroll taxes. I mean, they were successful at that, but what if they weren't? I know Mayor Lee mentioned that to me a couple of times. We almost lost Twitter too. Yeah, but San Francisco is going to fill up too, and we're the closest thing to them between the airport and Mission Bay. Closest city. Straight shot. They got to come through Brisbane. So it's going to be interesting how this evolves, and I think, we press forward. I know we've talked about developing a position for this, but, that's something that will, I think, evolve out of this as we go along, too, because it was really important that we met with the commercial brokers. Was really a great first step, to really get that perception of what, Brisbane was. And it wasn't favorable. It wasn't favorable. And it's right, and that's changing now, so.
It's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing.
Yeah, you're right, Clark. I mean, it is a process. The conditions weren't. I think what you talked about, Mitch, in regards to communication, and I think that we have improved in our lines of communication, and in our message that we get out there, but we're still, a long ways away. One of the other things you brought up was, looking at, our resources, whether they be natural resources or, being part of the duty-free zone. How do we, take advantage of those things? Hopefully sometime soon we'll have the charrette, and we'll be able to reach out to not only the citizens, but also to the business community, to the nonprofits, to everyone that has a stake in the game, to see, okay, well, what do you want in town, and then how do you provide the financial means to make that happen? And of course, businesses are part of that vital component of providing services for the town. And so, you get that information. You can only, with where we're set up right now, you can only go with it so far. How do you take that information and then start to direct? How do you implement steps? And, of course, we can do so much, on the subcommittee level, but really, I think that eventually we will need that person to be our representative, to be part of the team. And I know we've talked about, perhaps having that person come from the chamber, but I really do think that it should come from, it should be a city staff, position. We've been, meeting the last several years, and we were talking about, not just like economic development, but we're really starting to, talk about, sustainability. How does the stuff that we do with our economy, how does that affect, the things, in the environment? How does it affect social equity? And really, they're all, they're tied together. So, when we do have the charrette, I hope that we have, that the council has put in place someone who could then take that information and really run with it, because we've had so many times where we've done some kind of community workshop, and then we've gotten those great ideas, but then we don't do something with them. And I think right now we're in a good position, to make that happen, because the brokers have a better, perception of us. The the vacancy rates are much lower than what they used to be. But, it'd be nice to be able to have a say in the businesses that eventually fill up those spots, so that they're not just filling up a spot, but they're providing additional revenue to the city, perhaps in sales tax, or providing a better opportunity for jobs for our citizens.
But that's called marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, when Mitch is, coordinating something with a broker and a potential business, it'd be nice if there was like someone from the city that was there too, so that, because there will be questions, that a potential business will ask about the city, and it'd be great to have our city person say, yeah, we really want to have you be here because, our general plan, these are the things that we promote, and this is what your company is about. And,
That's what we're trying to define.
yeah, and, you think about VWR, right? And that loss of VWR was huge. Luckily for us, Recology came into play. But you think about if we didn't have Recology, right, and then we lost VWR, I mean, where would we be as a city? The things that we provide. I mean, just think about if you had $2 million taken out of the budget, right? What kind of recreation service would we have for the city? What kind of, I mean, there could be, our world would be completely different. But luckily, we don't have to deal with that at this time. But who's to say that relying on San Francisco and Recology for our future? I think we need to take matters into our own hands.
Well, we're fortunate that we had options that other cities just didn't have, and I mean, we got a weird anomaly too that our business population's much larger than our citizen population.
Yeah, but
You
for
don't
sure.
find that too many places.
You think about it though. I mean, if Recology wasn't there, and and with that loss of EWR, what kind of position would we be in? I mean, every city along the peninsula would be thriving. They'd be, they're expanding, and we would be in this lockdown mode, just trying to survive, trying to scratch a living. And we are so lucky that we don't have to do that, but we should start to think, okay, could there be a situation where we might find ourselves there? And I hope not. I mean, I hope that the Recology thing just, moves along as we hope that it will. But I don't want to put my or the city's, financial opportunities into one basket like we've done with VWR in the past. We have opportunity to diversify, but we have to take action too. And so, that's what we've been doing the last several years, trying to come up with a plan that, all of you can feel comfortable with and feel like, okay.
Well, I'd like to hear from Ray and Terry.
Yeah, well, just, making some kind of investment that more than what we're currently doing.
I'm in shock and awe. I'm just, it's great to have this information, and I appreciate all the hard work that everyone does, and I do think that it's a team effort. And I also don't feel that as long as we are providing what we need to for services, that we need to be in a more economy. I don't feel economically necessarily that, as long as you're keeping your plateau and you are able to keep up with inflation, I don't think that as a society we need to constantly grow so we can have more services and more amenities. That being said, I do think we can utilize our spaces more and attract businesses that way. So
Well, you know, yeah.
I have a different philosophy than some economic people, and it is too late at night to get into those philosophical differences.
Yeah.
Because I'm glazed over.
Yeah, 'cause
I'm
it's like-
totally
no,
glazed
I hear
over.
ya.
So I'm not going to go into those philosophical differences that, any economics professor could argue either side of the fence given the opportunities to do so. So thank you for your
Yeah.
hard work on this report, and Mitch for your dissemination of the business climate and what we have here as our opportunities and our things that we need to work on.
Yeah, I know you're going to comment, Ray, and I just want to say, Terry, that I agree with you. I look at the opportunities in Brisbane as the opportunities that we already have Sierra Point zoned, right? And we have these vacant lots. To leave them vacant, to me, is I don't think benefits anybody. And I think if that property was developed to its fullest and we implement, some of the things that we'd like to see out of Sierra Point, I think it's a positive. I don't see, really, of course, everything that you do has pros and cons, but I think the positives greatly outweigh the negatives. And when I look at, Crocker Park, I see a bunch of old warehouses and, still the truck traffic that, people don't like. And it's like, well, hey, is there a possibility to change the uses out at Crocker to a more efficient and more financially vibrant, condition? Is there opportunity to connect the Ridge and central Brisbane in a more cohesive manner? And perhaps by doing so, create more open space opportunities out in the industrial park than what currently exists. I mean, to me, I look at economic development in Brisbane, I don't see us, trying to build on San Bruno Mountain, or I don't see us, on any part of San Bruno Mountain. I see us trying to provide, looking at the current areas for development, while also, looking at how do you improve amenities for our citizens. I mean, I think we'd all like to have a better place to perhaps eat, or to get groceries, or to go to have a pharmacy, so we don't have to get in our car and drive away. I mean, it'd be wonderful to have a nice sit-down restaurant, and are we going to be able to do that just by, having things that only appeal to our citizens? I don't think so. I don't think it makes economic sense. You need to have things where you can draw people from the outside that along with your current population, so that then it becomes a viable opportunity or option for those entrepreneurs that are out there. And I think it's going to take part of the city to be a team player in that equation. So, but I think we're all on the same page. I mean, I just maybe not. So.
Shall we extend the meeting 15 minutes?
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 So I will not take much of that 15 minutes because I want to do just a couple of quick things on this issue, because I do want to finish the rest of the agenda. First, I want to thank the subcommittee, our council members, and especially Mitch, for a really incredible job on this subject. And I think the processes you've all followed and the interviews and talking to the brokers has really made a difference. And I think we really appreciate that because we all benefit from that. So I wanted to thank you all for that very much. The second thing is I think there's a lot more conversation that we could and should have. And we probably need to agendize a time that's earlier in the meeting where we can really have these, exchanges and make suggestions. I have a whole bunch of, small suggestions, but it takes time and everybody wants to get them out there on the table. And so I hope that we can, have a continuing conversation. The one thing that I think I'd like to ask the subcommittee to do, and it comes right from what Mitch was saying, and that is work on defining what we want to project to potential businesses in the marketing of Brisbane. What do we want to tell them? How do we do it? And so first we have to have some content. We have to have some ideas. We have to have some vision. And that means, you all meeting and sort of working on that. And eventually it would end up in written materials, on a website, whatever. But first you have to have a sense of, okay, what it is we want to convey to people who are considering locating here. And also we want to make sure we keep the people who are here happy in the process. So anyway, I would hope that, the subcommittee would start working on that. And it sounds to me as if you've been thinking about it a lot, but you haven't articulated it in a document or website form so far.
Yeah, it's developing, and it's
Right.
that branding that Mitch refers
Exactly.
to, and
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
finding that brand. This process it's slow, and
Right.
it's coming to that, and so, yeah, I would like to re-agendize this, certainly to get the feedback from both you and Terry and have that dialogue, and so maybe we can kind of help formulate and go forward.
Yeah, no, I think, if that's helpful, I always felt that, you reach out to the community and you get that information, and I mean, the two of us, with Mitch and staff, I mean, we can come up with some ideas of what the vision should be. I mean, but that really isn't, I think that,
Beginning. You got to start somewhere.
I tell you, I mean, I could come back tomorrow with a list of things, I mean, it's but in the end, you really need to have that charrette, and we need to do it, and then, but we have to have something in place if that's important to us. I mean, if we're going to invest the $10,000, and there has to be a reason why we're doing it. And then once we get that information, we want to be able to then start to put things in place. I think you can come up with and we'll do it, because I think, that's important.
That'll be part of it, and it's part of the equation.
Yeah, but I think, in the end, if we do come up with the vision, that then we put in place, and then that means budgeting, right? Because you can't just have these dreams and say, okay, that's great, thank you for doing it. The only way you can get it done is that you have to then put it in the budget, so and allocate it as a priority to make it happen. So I just hope that we get to that stage.
It's all part of the process.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so thank you very, very much. Let's move on.
All right.
City manager's report.
First item is the Baylands draft environmental document. Planning Commission public hearings have been scheduled for October 22nd, 4th, and 29th in the council chambers here. John, did you want to say anything further on that? Okay. And we've gotten that information out on our website and notification. The second item, we talked around this quite a bit earlier this evening, having to do with the Baylands soil processing update. The first thing I'd like to do is ask the Public Works Director just to update you on the progress with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and the dust abatement.
So we did in fact have the meeting that I had reported the last time we got together, and the applicant, the property owner, and the two operators did provide us the list that next Monday of immediate steps that they were taking within the required time frame, which was 10 days. They did submit an air and dust monitoring program. So that came to us last Monday. Myself and Air Quality Management District finished our review of that late last Friday, and our comments were forwarded to the applicant today, this morning. So we're looking for that updated plan to be implemented.
Okay, so a couple other issues. The staff did do an on-site inspection on the Brisbane recycling operation and confirmed that the stockpiles are currently within the 25-foot limit. We did a field inspection of the Baylands soil processing also at the same time, although our topographic maps on that operation date back to February of 2013, we've instructed the property owner to provide us with new topographic information by September 20th of this year, or this month, excuse me, to verify the 25-foot stockpile height limit compliance. The bigger issue, though, is that we're waiting on the applicant to submit for information so that we can get the process moving forward on the interim use permit. So we have given them a deadline of September 27th to get that information into us so that we can get that moving forward. And that kind of spawned the whole kind of thought process in terms of what's going to happen between now and the time that goes before the Planning Commission. We know the subcommittee is going to work on some standards or some expectations to bring back to the council. But we want to kind of ramp up that process because we kind of believe that the permitting process may take a number of months because there's a number of issues that are going to be involved with it. We kind of got a little bit into that earlier tonight, so I think this kind of wraps into your earlier discussion about the grading permit. And so we'll be setting up a subcommittee meeting to review not only the context of how the grading permit's going to play into this, but also just kind of the overall expectations out there. So the final item was that the staff's expectations is from the applicant are going to be that they provide us with kind of a management plan on how the site would be, how they would promote managing the site over the next 6 months or whatever period of time it takes to get the new interim permit in place so that we can kind of review that. I think that this kind of really does dovetail with the whole issue that we talked about earlier tonight about whether they're grading or not grading and just exactly what, how we categorize the activities that are going on out there, which I think are not quite as clear as what they might seem on the surface. I think for all of us right now, it doesn't seem clear at all. So I think we're sure clear that it's not clear. But I think going into it, there was a sense of things being more black and white than they perhaps are. So we'll continue to report back to the council at every 2 weeks. We'll try to get a subcommittee, or every 2 meetings a month. We'll try to get a subcommittee meeting together prior to your next meeting, and so that we can kind of help inform that update and also that conversation.
Okay, great. Very good.
Can I ask one quick question through the mayor? Which group was within the 25 feet?
The Brisbane, well, I think both of them are, but the one that the staff went out on the 13th, which I believe was last Friday, was specifically the Brisbane recycling concrete operation.
Is below the 25 feet?
Yes.
From?
Or within the 25 feet.
From?
The surrounding grade. I mean, this is still the same issue that, we're...
The pile upon the pile upon the pile.
Right. Potentially. And that's, I think, one of the issues we want to deal with in terms of the the short-term permit, I should say.
So none of the piles are over 25, 25, 25.
Well, I think the issue that, you know, you're highlighting is this phenomenon of the site rising over time because you're continuing to build piles upon piles, or however you want to describe it. I think we want to get our hands around how do we deal with that, and then how do we set up a standard that's.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to get the context down. Thank you.
I'm really curious, how'd you measure it?
The Howard Pierce from UPC went out there and he had the surveyor on a stick device, the GPS mounted device, so he mounted it at ground level and then schlepped up to the top of the pile and took another measurement from up there.
Did he put a laser or something?
No, it's a GPS based
GPS? Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the satellites were zooming in on him from outer space and telling him where he was.
Interesting.
And how tall? Oh, never mind.
Okay, so we move on. All right, Mayor, council members, Cliff, you wanted to talk about some meetings regarding the FAA?
Yeah, Claire, were you able to print out that,
You know, apparently I wasn't on the distribution because I can't find it.
you said, okay. Yeah, you know, I was going to have Clay print out this document that Brian Perkins, who is Jackie Spears' aide, yeah, in San Mateo County. And Brian has been working with the city in regards to the airplane noise over Brisbane. And so we have a meeting that's scheduled for September 23rd. And so I reached out to Brian. In the past, we've taken the approach of complaining very loudly, and we still need to continue to do that. Since I've been on the airport roundtable, I've been trying to kind of get to the argument of what the FAA says is the reason why the flights coming from SFO are bothering Brisbane, and it's because of the Oakland flights, and so that we have to have this safe airspace. And so, as a short-term solution, perhaps if the Oakland flights are higher, that means the SFO flights can be higher. That just stands to reason. Of course, there are arriving flights that are coming from the north that also are in the mix. Thursday, I have a tour of the TRACON facility with my counterparts from the Oakland Noise Forum. And so I'm hoping to establish better lines of communication, right? Find out what's going on with Oakland and tell them about our story, and then forming hopefully a subcommittee of some members from the Airport Roundtable and from the Oakland Noise Forum to talk about noise issues. But of course, then there's the long-term, hopeful solution, and that is with the Metroplex system, and that's the GPS system that the FAA is implementing in our area, and it'll be all across the nation. They've started doing it in New York, and so that's a GPS type system where all the planes are on a certain track, controlled by GPS. And so there is a environmental assessment that will be coming out in the spring. And so I've asked at this meeting that we talk about, how can the how can the Airport Roundtable have a constructive exchange in regards to the environmental assessment. sometimes when you get these, reports and you look at, okay, what are the impacts? And then they say, okay, well, we can mitigate these impacts based on certain standards, right? And well, maybe those standards are fine. You can say that the problem has been resolved or mitigated because of these standards, but we're still affected. And so I want us to have the opportunity to help shape what the final routes will be, not just, provide comments to standards that they're going to say are okay. And then, they're going to look at also, what are the conditions? What would be the flight patterns when the conditions are at their worst? When there's a storm outside. Because they will use weather to say, well, we have to make these changes in the flight patterns. And so if we run analysis in the worst case scenarios, then we can perhaps use that as a basis for all the flights, so that then we stand a better chance of having fewer disruptive planes coming over Brisbane. Because once this Metroplex thing is in place, the likelihood of us being able to make changes is going to be pretty much nil. So it's crucial that, at this point in the game, that we have the short-term strategy and long-term strategy. So granted, though, this is, just my own assessment of it. And of course, I think it needs to be a voice coming from the council as a whole of what steps do we need to take in regards to shaping the future flight routes over our city.
Sounds like another agenda item.
Yeah, that can be, yes.
Want to make a note of that? Okay. Okay. Any other reports people want to make, or can we move on to the written communications? Okay, move on. We have 4 written communications. Several of them require decisions on our part. The first was a decision that we asked the police chief to make, and she has agreed that the resolution from Los Angeles about the realignment problem is worthy of support, and we will do that at the league. So
yes.
Thanks for the letter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Second, we have this letter from Carolyn Livengood regarding Skyline, and there are 3 things she asked about. One is the Success Summit that Skyline is putting on, and wants to know whether any of us will be attending. That's Saturday, September 21st from 8 to 3, and the information on that was provided in the packet. And she's going to call me tomorrow and ask, is anybody coming? Is anybody coming?
I am.
I nominate the mayor.
The mayor's not particularly interested in to be perfectly honest.
I think you said it all, Mr. Mayor.
Is that a second? No.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, I mean,
I think you got your marching orders from
Okay,
yourself.
I'll tell her, sorry, unless staff person wants to go. Number 2, she was looking for someone to serve on the Skyline President's Council from Brisbane.
I have the name of a person I think who might be interested.
Okay.
Our former colleague, Seppi Richardson.
Oh, okay. Shall
I
we
think
nominate
could,
her?
Well, I mean, I think
With her approval?
I think you'd want to talk with her
Yeah, well, of
first.
course, yeah, right. Yeah, but I mean, if with her approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Seppi is aligned with Skyline quite a bit through her tenure, and so I think it would be, if something that she's willing to do, would be quite appropriate, you know.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned Seppi, Clark, unless you were going to do it, but I think she would be a good nomination for the San Mateo County Women's Hall of Fame as well. because I think she's the first female Persian elected official in the United States.
Something like that,
Like
yeah.
that, yeah. I think that's quite a milestone.
I think in the past, we've nominated Clara Johnson for the Women's Hall of Fame. She didn't get it, but we have nominated her. We can, I don't know, I guess the idea is that you do one at a time.
Just keep nominating until the person gets in?
Yeah, that's what Karen Livingood said, yeah. She said, you never know, just keep putting them in. I don't know.
Okay. It doesn't matter to me. I didn't know that information. So, I mean, if you want to continue to nominate Clara.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so let's find out whether Seppi's interested. And maybe we can dredge up the previous nomination for Clara.
So on the, having someone on the President's Council, is that something that costs or is just goodwill?
I think it's just goodwill. Meets quarterly, I think. And I don't know, I think it's one of those PR things that the President of Skyline.
Well, this President's Lunch is a fundraiser, right?
Well, I'm sure if you're on that thing, you'll have to go to this.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just wondering if we're suggesting that someone be on this council that's not on the President's Council, that's not on our city council, is that something we are expecting to fund?
The fun.
Fund, if we're asking Seppi or someone to participate in this President's Council, is this something we are expecting to fund?
I don't know, never thought.
Isn't this a fundraising
You saying this is the hook?
thing? Yes, this is a fundraising thing.
I'll give you a little bit of the history in terms of Brisbane's participation in the past, that Seppi, I believe, did sit on this. She was on something at Skyline, and then we joined. We paid for a table at their annual breakfast fundraiser, and I can't remember exactly how much money that was, $3,500 or something like that. So there was kind of a
Connection.
Yeah, a little hook
Quid
there,
pro
and I
quo.
see where you're saying.
yeah.
Well, we do still, in our budget, give them money. Maybe
It's
that's
through
I don't
that.
think it was that
maybe
much.
But it's not that kind of pricing.
I'm not
much it is,
entirely
but-
sure that Seppi's still not on this. I mean, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Could you contact her?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I think I got my answers on those. Then we have this letter from the San Mateo County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, nomination for the 5th Annual Mayor's Diversity Award, and I guess the mayor is, you have to make a nomination and it has to be approved by them, I guess, but I guess if you nominate somebody that is acceptable to them, that's probably a pretty sure bet. The problem is that, for me anyway, is the meeting is on the 30th, which they're to present these awards, October 30th. I think we already agreed that that's going to be the state of the city, so I can't go. So I don't know what you want to do about that, but the nomination's due by September 30th, which is before, our next council meeting.
So in the past, we've allowed the mayor to make the nomination. I mean, we've discussed it before. I mean, I think we,
Who have we nominated before, have we?
oh yeah, actually, Chief Macias,
Did she get it?
oh yeah, I mean, they get nominated,
Pretty much
all the
get it.
cities do it. It's just kind of a thing to kind of bring awareness to the Hispanic Chamber
Right.
of Commerce in Redwood City. And it's actually quite a big event.
It's a pretty big event. Yeah, it's unfortunate that that the state of the
And,
city is on that date. We haven't announced the date yet, though, have we?
No.
Kind of. I mean, that'd be difficult to change it. You've already kind of.
Well, that's actually, Yeah, right,
Okay.
no. Yeah, I'm not in favor of that.
Well, I mean, it is a pretty nice event, and
mean,
all the
if you-
cities are represented.
If you want to nominate somebody, Ray, I could do what I can to attend.
Okay. All right.
It's
Do you
on
have
a-
anybody that comes to mind? Someone who's, really works in promoting diversity and et cetera?
I think I have some folks in mind. Maybe we could talk about it.
Okay. Or send me an email, what have you, because outside of the chief, I don't know, and we've already done that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It could also be someone who's part of an organization.
Right.
Well, I'm
Be a
like,
business, be a,
Yeah, right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So open to ideas, but it's got to be before September 30th. Okay? All right. Then lastly, we have this communication from Kevin Mullen, our assembly member, and Warren Slocum, our supervisors. And this is also pretty fairly, at least topically sounds interesting. There was a meeting on Wednesday, October 23rd from 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, strengthening communities through social media. And they want us to select 2 people. And they could either be 2 council members, or 1 council member and a staff, or 2 staff, or... Anybody want to go?
Our,
We have to let them know before October 4th, also before our next meeting.
Caroline's not going to be back by then, is she?
No, she won't be available, but if you want 1 or 2 staff people to attend, we can certainly figure out somebody to send.
Any council members interested?
Yeah.
That's an all-day event. That's the same day, no, it's a different day. Okay.
Wednesday, October 23rd,
Yeah.
7:30 to 3:30. So obviously it's a substantial thing.
Yeah, I can't go. That's 7 days before Halloween.
I'm sure there's an explanation for that.
yeah.
My late night logic.
Okay. All right. Okay. No council member interested?
Actually, it's 8.
So 2 staff members are interested in
Okay,
going?
we'll get, Sherry actually already indicated she's interested, so we'll
Oh, okay,
have Sherry and
great.
somebody else.
All right.
Betsy,
Okay.
since she's here.
Okay, we got through all of that. Oral communications number 2.
All right.
Motion
All right.
to adjourn.
Seeing no request for speaking to the council, we are about to make a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
I will
All right.
second that.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.